Much like the story I told in the last video that I did, today's video is also an unsolved murder from here in Athens, Georgia. I'm standing right in front of the city hall now. Today's story, well, it was a tragic set of events. And both this one and the last one, they're eerily similar in the things that happened. They're just separated by nearly a decade. Whereas the last story took place in 2001, for this one we're going all the way back to 1992. April the 23rd of 1992 to be exact. Again, just like I did in the last story, I reached out to the local police department and requested the information. But because this case is unsolved and it is not a solved case, or it's not gone through the court system yet, they couldn't release any information to me. It's still an open investigation. So even though we won't have any crime scene photos or anything like that for what happened in this story, as per the norm, I am going to be going to the locations where the story happened here in Athens, where a University of Georgia student who was just about to graduate, she was found assaulted and murdered in her home. Today's story, this is the cold case murder of Jenny Stone. Today I'm starting this video out on the campus of the University of Georgia. In 1992, the University of Georgia and Athens, Georgia looked a lot different than it does today. The downtown area was transitioning from a sleepy little retail district into a bustling entertainment district. The boundaries of what would be the downtown district grew constantly, and the University of Georgia was growing larger and larger and larger by the day, bringing more and more people to the city every day. At that time in 1992, drugs were a major problem for Athens, especially crack cocaine. It was a very big problem here in the downtown area. One of the students who was attending the University of Georgia, who was an aspiring photographer named Jenny Stone. In 1992, Jenny was a senior. She was in a Kappa Delta sorority, and she spent a lot of time just roaming the downtown area looking for creative photos to take with her camera. Anyone that knew her would say that she was a wonderful person. She was beautiful and she was fun and creative, and she was just a joy to be around. Just weeks before the events of the story, Jenny had been handpicked by the Atlanta law firm Bockel, Clark & Gill for a coveted spot in the firm's advertising department. Once she graduated, she was going to get paid to take pictures for the firm, doing what she loved. It was her dream job, and she had so much to look forward to. In 1985, a couple who were restoring this building here at the corner of Clayton and Hull Street, they not only purchased the building and restored it, but they also restored this small home back here behind it. At one time, a Presbyterian church actually owned this building. It was like offices for them, and the home behind it was the church's manse, or where the minister lived. After the couple bought it and restored it, they lived there for some time, but by 1992 they had moved on to something bigger and better, so they decided to rent out the small home to a UGA student, which would give that student an affordable place to live within walking distance to the school. Ultimately, they rented it out to Jenny Stone. Jenny loved living here. She was right in the middle of town. She could go anywhere she needed to go pretty easily, and she could simply walk out of her home, and she had so many things to do and so many things to take pictures of. On April the 22nd of 1992, Jenny was here at her home, and she was up late working on a project for class. It was a mock ad campaign for peanut butter. Jenny was a smoker, so several times throughout the evening, Jenny would walk outside to smoke. On one of her smoke breaks, while she was outside, Jenny's current romantic interest stopped by to say hello and just to see how far she had gotten on the ad campaign. She had papers and poster boards scattered all over the floor inside of the home here. Jenny knew what all it meant, but to her boyfriend, he couldn't make heads or tails out of it. After just a couple of minutes, that boyfriend left so Jenny could keep working. Several hours later, at about 1 a.m., this boyfriend called Jenny to see if she had finished the project, and this would be the very last time anyone would talk to Jenny Stone ever again. Later on that day, it was April the 23rd, Jenny had missed 2 of her classes, including the one where she had to turn in this mock peanut butter ad project. Missing classes, especially classes that Jenny enjoyed, it was super rare for her. So as soon as the class was over, 3 of Jenny's friends walked from the campus over here to her little apartment home to find out what was going on with her. They just assumed that maybe she had stayed up all night working on the project, and maybe she had slept through her alarm or something. But even that was super rare for her, so they wanted to go see what was wrong. When those 3 friends got here to Jenny's home, they immediately noticed something wasn't right. It was in the middle of the day, and this front door here, Jenny's front door, it was open, like cracked open. The 3 friends just easily stuck their heads inside of the door to look around, and they knew instantly something bad had happened. Jenny's living room, which was normally kept nice and clean and neat, it was destroyed. Everything was flipped over and tossed around, and it was in disarray. Knowing that this just wasn't like Jenny, her friends immediately ran to a phone to call 911. Within minutes, the Athens Clarke County Police Department arrives here on the scene, and they put crime scene tape up all around the home. Those friends, in the meantime, had told other friends about what they found, so crowds of students started gathering outside over here, and people who knew Jenny started gathering out in the street, and this caught the attention of news agencies and reporters. So news agency vans and live camera crews also started arriving out here and began asking questions. To make matters worse, Jenny's parents actually found out what happened to her because they were watching the news that night, and they saw that Jenny's house was in the background as they were talking about a murder that had taken place. Law enforcement was still investigating at the time, so they hadn't gone to her parents and made notification. So you got to imagine that's a pretty horrible way to find out something had happened to your daughter. As law enforcement entered into Jenny's home, it was very clear right away that there had been a struggle. As they made their way back to the back bedroom, the heinous scene that they discovered was brutal, and for most of the officers on the scene, it was unlike anything they had ever seen before. As they walked into the bedroom, they found Jenny Stone laying on the floor at the end of her bed. Her shirt and bra were pushed up, exposing her breast, and her shorts and underwear appeared as if they had been ripped off, and they were laying on the floor right next to her. She had blood all over her face, coming from her nose and her mouth, and her room was just absolutely destroyed. Laying on top of Jenny's body, officers picked up what appeared to be a cockroach. They believed initially that this cockroach had fallen off of the killer because there was no traces of any infestation in her home. So it was really odd that it was there. So they thought that maybe while this attack was going on, a cockroach had fallen off the killer and just, landed on her as he was leaving or something, which also kind of pointed them in the direction of someone from the homeless population here in Athens. Investigators on scene used, well, now they call it luminol, but back then it was like an orange powder substance that they would put on stuff and then use a black light. So they used this orange powder stuff, and they discover several strands of hairs on Jenny's body that didn't belong to Jenny. They found more hair that wasn't Jenny's and fresh semen in Jenny's bed, and they discovered blood under her fingernails where it looked like Jenny fought her attacker. She fought to get his hands off of her neck, and the blood from her face ran down onto her hands and under her fingernails. Using this orange powder and black light, investigators found that in the hallway there was a smear on the wall where it looked like her face had hit. In that smear, you could clearly make out the side of her face and her mouth as if she had been punched in the face and fell into the wall, or as if her face had been used as a battering ram straight into the wall. It was just absolutely horrible. Many of the officers on scene, despite trying to do their jobs, they were also having to exit the home and go to their police cars and try to hide their tears. The things that happened to this young girl were just absolutely horrible, and her last few hours alive, she was tortured. At the same time, it was clear to investigators that she fought her killer. She fought with everything that she had to try to stop this. It just wasn't enough. There's a shot from the newspapers where you can see the crime scene unit at that door there, trying to figure out what happened. After the investigation wrapped up at the scene, it was determined, or rather it was their theory, that Jenny had probably come outside to smoke a cigarette, and while she was outside, she probably like walked around the block or something to clear her head, and because she wasn't going far, she didn't lock the front door to her home. They believed that it was during this time that the killer made his entry into her home. They said that they don't think the initial motive here was to attack Jenny, that it was probably a burglar, someone who was just looking to steal stuff for a quick buck to buy drugs or something. But he was in her home, and he realizes, based off of her clothes, that a young woman lived here by herself. And then he hears the front door open. It's Jenny coming back into the home. So the killer hides, and as he hears Jenny coming down the hallway, heading back to her room, that's when he jumps out and he slams her head into the wall, making the aforementioned smear on the wall. The investigators at the time say they believe that the burglar was already excited because he was committing the crime, and then he happened to see that Jenny was a very pretty woman, which aroused him even more, and that's what led to him sexually assaulting her. Surely at first Jenny would not have known what was going on. She would have just been walking down the hallway and her head got slammed into the wall and it caught her off guard. But as the killer started trying to subdue her, she would have regained some of her faculties, realizing what was happening, and that's probably when she started to fight back, which caused all of the chaos that was all over the home. Obviously, this killer was able to overpower her and win the battle, but she didn't go down without a fight. After the evidence recovered from the scene, the hair strands and the semen and any DNA from the scene, after they were all tested, it was revealed that they belonged to an African-American male, and that the hair strands and the semen both came from the same person. Now, obviously, in 1992, DNA testing was a lot different than it is now. You couldn't just swab someone's cheek and match up DNA. Back then, you pretty much had to take someone's blood in order to match up DNA found at a crime scene. So, throughout the investigation, law enforcement brought in dozens of people and got blood samples and checked their DNA, but nothing ever matched. Several days after Jenny's murder, it was reported to law enforcement that the night of the murder, a light-skinned African-American male had been spotted out here in the streets of downtown Athens trying to sell Jenny's camera equipment to buy drugs. We know this because a man named Donald Wilson, he was a homeless man at the time, and he was living on the streets in downtown Athens. And a couple of days after the murder, he came forward after he had heard what happened, and he told investigators that this light-skinned black male, about 5'10", with a mustache, came up to him between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. and the man asked, "Do you know where I can get rid of a camera?" He was carrying this camera in his hand at the time. That night, Mr. Wilson did not know this had happened. He didn't know that Jenny had been assaulted and killed. So he pointed the man down the street to a pool hall where the man successfully swapped out this camera for some crack rocks. Once investigators reached out to the person who supposedly bought the cameras, unbelievably, they still had them. They were hanging up on the wall at this person's parents' home outside of Athens, Georgia. Now, this man, he took investigators out there and they retrieved the cameras, and amazingly, inside of the cameras was a roll of film that still contained pictures that Jenny had taken of herself and her mock and campaign for peanut butter. Today, present time in 2022, a lot of students at the University of Georgia probably have no idea about Jenny Stone and what happened to her, but despite that, they do know her name because each year one person is awarded the Jennifer Lynn Stone Award for creative advertising. The university created this award to make sure Jenny's name was never forgotten after this, and because of Jenny's murder, Athens, Georgia became a different town. Law enforcement developed teams and task force, and they cracked down on the drug problem that they had. They installed a lot of new street lights and new cameras in the downtown district to help people. And even still, to this day, there is a heavy police presence in the downtown area and all around the university. All of this was put in place because of what happened to Jenny Stone and the city not wanting it to happen to anyone else. Another thing that the university has done for her is directly across from the School of Law Library here on campus. This is their library. They have erected this bench right here, and right at the foot of it is a memorial plaque in memory of Jennifer L. Stone, 1969 to 1992. The College of Journalism and Mass Communication. To know Jenny is to love Jenny. That's awesome. So they erected this plaque and they gave her a scholarship in her name so that no one would forget her name. Now, because this is an unsolved investigation, the case file could not be released to the public. So we don't know where the investigation is right now. We know that they found DNA at the scene, and we know that DNA has come a long way since then. We know that they can run DNA against people that have been arrested and charged with felonies all across the country. And they can also run DNA against like genealogy websites and stuff. But I'm uncertain if that's something that law enforcement has looked into or not. We know that from the mitochondrial DNA that was recovered at the scene, it shows that the attacker was a light-skinned black male, but to date this person has not been named. In the 20+ years that Jenny's case has been unsolved, law enforcement has investigated quite a few wild and crazy theories that the public has presented to them. They have even had a few suspects for a short amount of time. There was one guy who worked as a day laborer, just cleaning warehouses and stuff. He told them that he thinks that he may have done it, and they tracked him down to a warehouse in Shreveport, Louisiana. When the cops pulled up, he ran, but they quickly caught him, and he was extradited back here to Athens, but his DNA did not match. Investigators have had psychics calling in, offering visions and feelings, but none of that has panned out. One of the craziest leads they received was a rumor that a local judge's son had actually been the one to kill her. The police have actually proved that this man had a solid alibi and that his DNA didn't match, so there was no chance that he could have done it. But that rumor was passed through the bar scene in town until the local people here believed it as fact. They believe a judge's son did it, and that his dad is a judge, that it's being covered up. But the law enforcement says that those claims are just simply not true. The initial investigator assigned to the case has since retired, and the new lead investigator still cross-checks DNA found in their database every month to see if it matches DNA found at the scene of Jenny Stone's murder. If you or anyone you know has any information about the murder of Jennifer Lynn Stone, please contact the Athens Clark County Police Department. There's still a big reward for information leading to an arrest in this case, and it could be yours. That is going to do it for this episode today and the murder of Jenny Stone. I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. If you're new here, go down, hit that subscribe button, then hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. If you're one of those wanting to help support the channel, there's links in the description box below, but just watching and hitting the thumbs up, that's all I ask. Thank you all. I will see you again in the next one. Please, all of you, stay safe and stay healthy. Much love to you all.